little old, I guess they could shoot you with an umbrella, little gun, and it'll go in your skin, and you'd be just kind of messed up. And the U.S., now they always, you notice they always talk about the Russians did this to so-and-so, and the Russians, like they don't do nothing to nobody, right? So if them and the Russians is equal on everything else, one might be 1.5 and one might be 1.7, but they're all out there. So if the Russians can give you radioactive so-and-so and you ready to drop dead, right? They can imitate that and they can do it to everybody and they blame it on the Russians, right? But the Russians have had gadgets from way back in the 60s. Okay, the U.S. has also had them. This is my opinion. In 1974, since I had went all over the world, they had to, like they tag animals, so they tagged me. I know that because 77, 78, I'm running in the hills. And every now and then, we run trails like in the woods that are like, you can run a 13-mile trail, or you could run 8-mile trails, 10-mile. You know what I mean? You know which trail, when we run it, which trail we gonna run this morning? So you go back this way, you go this way, and back up, you can go on down to the meadow, and up you can go just a short 4-mile run if you want. Okay. So I had a feeling about all of this, and every now and then, when I'm running by myself, I would zip into the woods. I would just zip into the woods. And when I come out, I would see white folks, like they running all around trying to find something, because before you come out of the woods, you take a peek, and every time, I'm telling you, there they are. Where they? So at that time, they could, the beeper stuff, they could about figure where you are. They know, but is he talking to somebody? What is he doing? Yeah. Did he drop a note in the ground? You know what I mean? Is he picking up a package? What is he doing? So, okay, that's in those days. I'm gonna speed up a little bit, and I'll come to the 90s in South Africa. Before I had all that medical stuff and had to go into the hospital and all of that, the first thing is our friends are doctors and everybody. So this is one doctor. These rich people they take them on all kind of trips. So this trip was no carb diet. So what they did was they would have all of their people go to Dr. So-and-so, Indian doctor. And they had a blood test, and then after that, he would write them a diet or something like that. So it's a no carb diet. And it's definitely a weight loss diet, because all they did lose weight, and they, it's regular no carb or low carb diet. So anyway, I went to a couple of meetings, so they had me go to their doctor too. Now, to me, this is just innocent stuff, but it's not innocent. Here's why. I missed 1 or 2 appointments, and they was really getting, hey, you better go get your blood test. So I went and got my blood test. And then I had my doctor's appointment. I got a blood test from one of their nurses or something. and then they sent it in to the doctor. When I went to the doctor, he looked at my stuff and he said, da 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 da. Then I said, well, what do you recommend? He said, whatever you're doing is fine. Just keep, in other words, he didn't have no recommendation for me. Okay. So that was, they didn't have a blood test from me from nowhere for quite a while. They needed that blood test. What would the blood test do? It'd tell you everything that's going on in your body, just about. Right? It'd tell you what's happening, high sugar, low sugar, this going on, that's going on. But it tells you the strengths and weaknesses. If we want to produce blood clots, that's what happened to me. Well, how is he prone to that? Okay, he's running and he's got good, but we can give him a little bit of so-and-so and it'll produce blood clots. You know, so this is what was happening for a while. Then, the next time I went to South Africa, another one of my friends is a doctor also. I said, well, Doc, I was 53 then, something like that. I said, you know, I said, when I come here, when I'm in Johannesburg, it's difficult for me to breathe when I'm exercising. I said, but when I'm here, where he lived in Petersburg, which is now Polokwane, he said, I said, when I'm here in Polokwane, I'm not, I seem smooth along. He said, well, it's the altitude. He said, Johannesburg is high felt. In other words, it's high up, maybe 6,000 feet. Petersburg is 2,000 or 3,000 feet. You see what I mean? So, you know, the higher you go, the more you so pretty soon, I'll give you a perfect example. Rahman went over to South Africa, remember the fighter? And then what's the name came over there, he went a month ahead of time. That's why he beat whatever his name was. You notice Rahman didn't win no fights after that. They got him over there. He didn't even know how he got the fight, how he won. He won because he'd been over there doing dawah, his daddy. They doing dawah, took their Quran and stuff over there, and he did all that, and they loved him, and they had him going all around. He was there a month ahead of time, and he was training every day for all that month, right? So when whatever his name was, yeah, the dread-wearing boxer, he could beat Rahman. You remember Rahman, huh? Yeah, he ain't won a fight since. Think about it. Why did he win in Johannesburg and other guys better? Not Lennox Lewis.
He had dreads from England.
That's who Lennox. Yeah. That's who he beat.
Lennox Lewis.
He beat Lennox Lewis. And he ain't beat nobody else though. Why? Because Lennox Lewis went over there 2 days ahead of time, and it was 6,000 feet up, and he wasn't paying no attention. And after a while, he got a little giddy, and you know what I mean. And what's the name? Been there a month. He's acclimatized. 2 weeks generally for acclimatization. Okay. The point I'm making was, so the doctor told me, he says, well, you know, between 50 and 55, all the things that happened to you in the past will catch up to you. Like, for instance, if you worked on a farm and you bent over all the time, usually the age would be about 47 when it would be like that. Now, for me, when we was over on A Street and I started doing squats, I couldn't do them, or I wasn't getting no benefits. It was hurting my back. Or, you know, you're not hurt, but pull it a little bit. So I stopped doing squats and started doing deadlifts, which give you the same thing as squats, your back, your legs. You know what I mean? And I was at 47. I was 47. And then that's what made me remember the farmers and all of that. When they get 47, not that exact age, a little older, a little younger. Okay, so I'm talking about the body right now. So the doctor told me, he says, well, you know, when you get like 52, 53, 55, the things that you've done begin to, that's a second stage for your body. He said, don't you notice before they got all the modern medicines, when people would get in their mid-50s, they would start getting high blood pressure, and by the time they're 60 and 70, that's what the 66 was the age level, just imagine, 66. So before modern medicine, simple modern medicine, like to lower your blood pressure, to thin your blood out, just take those blood thinners. Look what it would have did for Roosevelt and all, just blood thinners. Not to mention antibiotics. But anyway, so he was telling me these things. Now this doctor is not associated with this scheme that's going on. Maybe the other doctor is in Johannesburg, and the blood takers, and they looked in my blood and they said, well, this guy, we could hook him up with some blood clots. So when I take my family, Sister Bahia, we drove to California. I guess Sakina was 1.5, maybe 2 years most. We got up in Colorado, and it was Wyoming. We got up in Wyoming. I stopped at one of the rest stops. It was late at night, and it was too late to go to a hotel because we pay all that money, and So I sat in the car, and they was in the back seat. I sat in the car, and then we at a rest stop. Then we drove. We stopped in Rock Creek. Is it called Rock Creek, Rock Spring? That morning, filled up with gas, and I had my jump rope. So I took a couple of skips, and I was, so I was super tired, and actually, Sister Bahia was kind of laughing, as though she knew what was going on. That those blood clots was kicking in, So, and they were in the lungs. They were in the lungs. Now, I got a shot of that before, but I won't go into that. But when I got to California, I said, well, we'll be in California a little later. I'm going to run this out. Because everything else I would have, I'd go on the trail and it would be just gone. I just run and that's it. So I got to running, and I got a real different, I said, this is different. You get a pain, it's different. You said, this is different. Or you break your leg, or you break your foot, or you sprain your foot. When you break it, you said, this is different. It is different. Okay. And if you know those things. Anyway, to make a long story short, I didn't get better. And by the time we drove back and we stopped in Philadelphia, I couldn't even lift a briefcase, So they just took me to the hospital. And when I was in the hospital, the guy said, oh, come on. I looked at him, and the way he was treating me, the little quick test they did, it was So they gave me something right away, and I urinated a lot. He said, at least your kidneys are working good. And I mean one of them whole bottles to take the liquid off of your body. Another thing is, I had a minor something or other because of the lungs, you know, the breathing, and they was considering it a light heart attack, like, you know, that's the way they was looking at it. It wasn't a heart attack, because I've been running all the time and my heart was strong, but they was panicked. You know, you could tell how they looking at you, and as soon as they did that, it wasn't but a hot minute that the next day, technically, I was ready to go, because they gave me a blood thinner, and they gave me something to keep the water off of your body. A blood thinner, and the same thing I take now, but I take only 1/3 of what they say, you know, and I'm fine. Anyway, but they kept me in the hospital, then they transferred me to Harriman. Harriman's a big, hospital down there. Then they gave me all kind of tests. And I know from reading that when you go to the hospital now, if you got a certain insurance, they give you every test in the hospital, because that's how they make money. So the guy in radiology, not radiology, now they put the little grease and salve on you, and he put it on my legs, and he looked at my legs, and he said, oh, so, they said, he said, watch this, and listen, so he squeezed my legs, and it went whoosh, you know, you could hear it on me. He said, you hear that? Sounds like an ocean, right? Or a wave. I said, yeah. When he squeezed my leg, the blood, whatever, he know what he's doing. He says, so you're an athlete, huh? I said, well, I do. He said, yeah, okay. So he said, they said you had a blood clot? I said, yeah. He said, far out. You know, weed smoking white. So he's saying, excuse the language, that's bullshit. Whatever it is, he didn't go into nothing, because that's what he do. But he was saying, you and that don't add up. You know, it don't add up. Something's going on here. A few days later, in the hospital, the white lady, Dr. Earn, whatever her name was, she said, look, we're going to put one of these things, right in your groin. It's going to go up and look in your lungs. And I was looking, I said, lungs don't need, them boys look pretty good too. You know, because your blood, you can see your blood endings and all of that, you know. And she said, now, you might cough once or twice. I said, cough. So cough is, if your body is rejecting something, if you breathe in something, you'll cough to reject it. Right. If you touch something inside of your body and you cough, that's your body rejecting that. So that's when they attach this modern stuff. See, the other stuff, it got old, the battery run down from 74. This is the way I'm looking at it. And everything falls into this. Now, hey, this is over 20 years later, almost 30 years later, and now they have to put their latest gadget. Now their latest gadget controls all the flow of everything. That's why they can, and I had to study this. I said, I had to study, is this coming from external stuff like this happening? Not that I know anything about medicine, but when you get down with physical fitness and you studying blood flows and what your heart does, you know, you get a feeling of what's going on in bodies, in the human body. And just a general survey of the latest studies kind of keep you up on what's happening. So you know you're not a medical specialist, but you kind of got to feel if something is happening to yourself or to people. So I studied myself, and I came up that they can do whatever they want to me internally. Now, because remember, the stuff that's happening to me after that, I have to look and say, is this coming from the outside? Or did they leave something in me? And we've talked about this, and this is a regular subject. Did they put something in me, and I came up to the conclusion, yes, that's when they put it in. And they put it in for that reason. And I happened to see some surveys and some documentary. And there was a medical examination of somebody, and they showed how when they went into the body of this person, they pulled out a little thing, because the reason they was surveying that person, because see, if the Russians had them, who had them, and they pulled out a little, not cylinder, but a little thing just that big. And said somebody already into this guy. And not us, but somebody's already got him hooked up. You know what I mean? And so when I looked at myself, I know the cycle. If you get sick, you get a little drowsy, a little bit sad, then you get your sickness comes on, then you graduate out of it, and then, okay. But all of the stuff that was happening to me, I would be fine today, bam, and it would hit. And I mean, when they had a program over at Howard and a play, when Sakina and Fatima was playing in Lion King, I couldn't hardly, hey man, I couldn't hardly move. It was unbelievable. And I was telling them I may not be able to make it. And they were saying, oh, you're just playing this, that, and that. So I forced myself to go. And after I got back, when I went to sleep and woke up, I was fine. Nothing happened. That cycle persisted. I think I mentioned this a few things. That I get the monster, next day I can turn flips. That's not the normal human cycle. Or when we was up on the roof,